I'm very excited to kick off the purpose of tonight's call, which is to welcome Kailey Brown, who is the co-founder of Military Wild. So this is National Outdoors Month. I'm a big fan of the outdoors. I'm a big hiker. So I'm excited to welcome Kailey with us to tell us a little bit about how we can get involved in the outdoors, whether we're experienced or we're brand new to that, and bring our families with us, and how Military Wild can help all of us get connected. So Kailey, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you. I don't normally speak to bigger groups, so hopefully you guys can bear with me and I stay graceful and not awkward. But my name is Kailey Brown. I am, like Sheila said, one of the co-founders of Military Wild. We are a 501(c)(3) nonprofit outdoor community that specifically caters to the military community. And we started in 2018 from a super tiny friend group on Guam to now 20,000 members around the world with chapters everywhere like Spain, Virginia, Guam, Hawaii, Texas, South Dakota, Alaska. And so it's been really great. It's been an awesome ride. It happened really organically. It is the epitome of people saying, how did you know this was going to happen? And we didn't. It just kind of naturally grew the way that it's turned into today, which has been really exciting and fulfilling. And I kind of always talk about this one story of not only how Military Wild started, but kind of like the culminating factors of what led me to going from being this metaphorical speck in the ocean and literal on the island of Guam, not knowing anybody, finding myself new to the military community, not having a lot of support or network around me, and kind of everything that went into where I am now, which is a career that is totally focused on the outdoors. I get to have Military Wild as my passion project on the side. I have an incredible community that has gotten me through some of the hardest things I've ever gone through in my entire life. And it all stemmed from being on Guam, not knowing anybody, being new to the military community, not even really knowing what direction things were going to go in for me as far as the future was. And so I always tell a story of I found myself on Guam in 2018 with my partner. We weren't married. I'm gay. We don't have any children. And so you can imagine that being on an island 8,000 miles away from anybody I knew, trusted traveler was not a thing on Guam at the time. So I couldn't even get on base to participate in anything that might have helped me build community. And even was not allowed to join any Facebook groups for my partner's squadron at the time because we weren't married. So a lot of factors working against me, and really disheartening, and really kind of made it tricky to figure out how I was going to fit into not only the military community, but how the military community was going to fit into my life at that time. So a few months went by, finding myself, lost. There's no GPS. So finding myself lost in alleyways with wild dogs, or talking to people, but not really hitting it off, or being excluded. And then one day, I just had been hanging around the house figuring out what I was going to do. And I saw this last minute post on Facebook saying that there was going to be a hike on island and it was happening pretty soon. And I just at that point had nothing to lose. I'm a pretty outgoing person and it still felt a little intimidating, but I jumped in the car, headed to this hike, and sat in the car and didn't know if I was going to get out, and told myself 1,000 reasons of why I wouldn't get out of the car, of why nobody would like me. I wasn't a spouse, so how was I going to fit in? And just so many things that I think we sabotage ourselves with when we're new to a community and we don't necessarily have anybody to ground ourselves to, or to tie ourselves to. My partner was incredibly busy at work, so she wasn't really an option. Lots of TDYs, lots of long hours. And it really just took somebody looking at me and saying, "Hey, are you coming?" And that was it. And I've centered my entire life, career, personal goals, personal mission around being that person that says to others, "Are you coming?" And I think that that is all it takes sometimes. I'm not saying that every duty station that's going to happen. I think that the sayings that we're so used to hearing, bloom where you're planted, it is what you make of it, you signed up for this, those are really tough things to hear because that is not always the case of where we find ourselves. There aren't always going to be resources for us, and there aren't always going to be situations where we can make that feel accessible to ourselves. So after that, my friends and I started Military Wild, and a lot went into not only getting it from where it was, but to getting myself from being this person that felt, you know, didn't have a lot of meaning at that time. I was following another person in their career in their life and trying to figure out what would that look like for me? How am I going to make myself stand out? I had never not had a job before. On Guam was the first time I think since I was 13 that I didn't have a job and I wasn't making my own money. And that was a really hard pill to swallow and a really hard kind of hurdle to get over for myself. Um, and a lot of different things went into that. And so Military Wild was definitely the biggest opportunity. But I tell any of my military friends, I tell anybody in the military community, there are so many ways that getting outdoors can benefit you mentally, physically. And there's a lot of things that you can do that are outdoor adjacent without being someone that necessarily likes to hike. I consider myself to be very average fitness wise. I'm mid-sized. I haven't run any triathlons, and I still consider myself to be an outdoorsy person. So from here on out, what I'm talking about, I just want everybody to know that the outdoors and getting outside can look like anything you want it to. You do not have to be doing hard hikes. You do not have to be doing popular things you see on social media. You don't have to do anything outside of your comfort zone. And so if one day you just don't have it in you, and I know that there have been plenty of days where it's all I can do sometimes to function throughout the day, if times are hard or whatever it might be, it's a tough day, getting to your mailbox, getting outside for the day. If you go for a bike ride, if you like to garden, if you like to talk to your neighbor outside while you're, mowing your lawn, those are all things that are still benefiting you from just being outside. Um, and so from Guam, the way that I formed community was not only getting outside with Military Wild, but it was also through other channels. Volunteering. I will talk about volunteering until I'm blue in the face. It's a hill I will die on. And it doesn't have to be for things that you don't care about. I think sometimes we get stuck in this mindset of like, volunteering should be something good for the community and I should be selfless and it should be something, that's available to me. But on Guam specifically, I started my volunteering career before Military Wild was really big enough to take up a lot of my time by volunteering at the USO. And that was eye-opening for me, not in the like day-to-day tasks of what it entailed, but just of the people that I got to meet. And so that started these little fibers coming off of me on Guam, right? Where I would deliver birthday cakes to the Frank Cable, which was a ship that was there, that parents had sent their kids that were stationed there. Or I would meet locals who would help me feel more ingrained in the culture and would teach me more about the island. So I was starting to feel like this wasn't just a place I found myself, it was starting to become home. And there's so many opportunities that combine the outdoors and volunteering that again can look like anything you want them to look like. If you want to go plant trees, and then at the end eat snacks, that's a really great opportunity, especially if you want to see the fruits of your labor down the road. So it could be tree planting, it could be, book drives, it could be handing out waters at a marathon. These are all really small ways to start building that feeling of you belonging somewhere and having people that you, even just seeing a familiar face in public feels so good, right? Like Laura, I know you're saying you're at Belvoir. And when I found myself stationed outside of DC in Northern Virginia, while my partner was at the Pentagon, I would run into people that I met from Guam. And just that was this like magical feeling of, okay, I'm not here alone. This person knows me. Or Sheila, you were talking about running into a friend that recognized you, and it's like that instant fiber that's being put out that connects me to this other person is now making it feel like I'm not just floating in the abyss. So I always tell people getting outside is great. If you can find ways where you start putting these fibers out to other people and you're tying in this feel good activity, but you're also getting to learn more about the resources in your community, the organizations in your community, other people that you might have something in common with. I can't tell you how many friends that I've had since Guam who I've met at different duty stations along the way again and again and again that I met from little volunteer things or little coffee meet and greets or little chats that are set up, or instances like what we're doing right now where we're just talking to each other. um, so yeah, I think volunteering and getting outside are both really incredible ways to overcome isolation. I think that the other facet of this is finding yourself. I know a lot of us have been in a position where we're suddenly not working. It's really hard to figure out what your life looks like when you no longer have this professional goal that you're working towards, and you can lose a lot of meaning for yourself. And so another fiber that I attached to myself was collecting every single thing that I did volunteering and in my community and with my friends, collecting it into this very rough draft resume that I kept to myself on the side. Adding to that, like if it was tree planting, I would look into what business, like traits, characteristics, skills that tied into it, and start collecting these resources that I could use to my benefit for when I was able to start, right? Because there's always an end to a duty station. So I knew that we weren't going to be on Guam forever. What would it look like when we did leave Guam? Um, and it doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen right away. And that can be really disheartening and frustrating. But I think that sense of like you're collecting something for the greater good of yourself is a really great way to propel yourself to like the next level of what you're working towards. So for me, right, Guam, I'm collecting all of these resources, connections with other people in my community that understood what I was going through and what I was overcoming. I was collecting friends, massively important. I was collecting skills. And I was basically looking at myself as, this center of what I wanted and the things that I could attach to myself that would ultimately help me go after what I wanted in the long run. Um, Another great like little example of this is, so after Guam, we PCS to Fort Leavenworth for not even a full year of school, and for my partner. Um, and the very first week we're there, I had that overcoming feeling again that we all get when we start over somewhere new. And it was like, man, I had just built this incredible life for myself on Guam. It had felt like the best place on earth. I couldn't believe that it felt like everything it had leaving from when I got there. And here I was, basically the sandcastle of getting knocked down, dragged back out into the ocean, and now you're left with nothing again, which is a lot. And I'm sure that we've all felt that at one point. And so the first week we were there, I looked up just on Facebook, in the spouses group, I think, just different volunteering opportunities. I looked at local businesses, and there was a farm that was local to me that was saying, oh my gosh, we have this abundance of green beans and not enough people picking them. So come pick however many you want and you can keep them for free. We just need to like start harvesting our plants. And my poor partner looked at me like, we're going to go pick green beans, aren't we? And I was like, we sure are, girl. Get that bucket. And so we did. And, it's like, I think sometimes it can sound kind of corny, but it really was as simple as us driving up to this gorgeous farm. And like at that point, cracking open a beer with the owner, who was so delighted that people took her up on her offer, picking green beans. And now we have this friend in the community that knows us by name. We know her farm, so we can recommend it to other people. So we feel like we're starting to become ingrained in this community. We're getting outside. My partner at the time had dealt with a lot of PTSD issues. And it was something that I saw viscerally myself, of like, we would spend this time outside connecting with not only each other, but our community, enjoying the fresh air, enjoying this activity that we probably wouldn't have done normally. I know that I had never been green bean plucking before. And I think that was really when it kind of all connected for me. And it was like, yes, okay, getting outside is the key. Building community is the key. All of these things, how can we do them together? And so I went from having no job on Guam. Before Guam, I had been in the service industry for what felt like a billion years. So really like launched off of nothing to another chapter of not a whole lot. And then I started really small. I looked for jobs at Virginia State Parks in Northern Virginia, got a job there. It was pretty low paying, but it got my foot in the door. Went on to a job at the Student Conservation Association, which was my next goal. And again, this was all through a resume of collecting things I had done. Like starting Military Wild was really helpful, of course. I think starting a 501(c)(3) is a great thing to have. But I would say that a lot of what I did and how I got these jobs was not from that specific piece. It was from the fibers that I'd been collecting along the way of like the skills, the resources, the um, the references that I had on my resume of people that knew how hard I was working to build this career for myself and wanted to vouch for that. Um, and then after the student conservation, I got a job where I am now with Blue Star Families. I'm sure that you guys are all familiar with that name. And I do my literal dream job. Every day I wake up, it doesn't feel like work. I am a program manager for Outdoor Explorers for All, which is a program that gets military families outside, which is really similar to what we do at Military Wild. So started off with my passion project. I get to do that in my free time. And then to pay my bills, I get to do another incredible thing. And it all centers around getting families, military families specifically, into the outdoors. Military Wild is something I am incredibly proud of. My friends and I have poured sometimes literal blood, sweat, and tears into it. If anybody in this call has not heard of us, we lead free hikes, we lead free events. It doesn't have to always be hikes. I have lots of friends that love the outdoors and they're like, God, please don't ever invite me on a hike. I could actually care less about purposely walking uphill. Thanks for putting that link, Sheila. We have chapters all over the place. I recently moved to North Carolina where we have a chapter from Northern Virginia where there's a super active chapter. And we basically create community events that focus on getting outside for military families to come join us, to be the face that says, hey, are you coming? And it's going really well. It's been really incredible to receive emails on emails of it could be anybody's spouses who have a spouse on deployment and this was their lifeline, finding something that they could look forward to. We lead about 3 hikes per month at our chapters that have more than one ambassador. We have ambassadors that lead these hikes for us that are all of us are volunteers. They are spouses, they are veterans. We have an incredible ambassador at our Ohio chapter who just retired as a colonel in the Air Force, and she is incredible. And she leads hikes in her retirement now. And for her, that's a great way to stay connected to the military community that she was in for so long and now is transitioning into a different part of her life. Um, it's been really incredible to see it grow from this little seedling to an organization that really cares about its community and really gets out there to get its members out there. And I'm incredibly proud of it. And I think that all of these things I'm talking about, it's so easy to talk about them. It sounds like it happened overnight. And I just cannot stress enough that this was the last 7 years of really just, like I keep saying, collecting these fibers, connecting myself to others, finding ways to embed myself into a community that now feels like home. And it's really paid off, not just with Military Wild, not just with my job. Those are two really incredible aspects, but it could be getting a random care package from a friend that's stationed in Germany that I don't ever get to talk to, but thought of something or thought of me when she saw something and took the time to send it. It could be me running into a friend that I haven't seen that's like visiting family from another duty station. And so those connections and fibers really take you places. And I know that I have a lot of friends in the military community who are still struggling. And there's always somebody out there to ask if you're coming. You just have to really kind of like source yourself to these opportunities, even when it feels scary, which again is so much easier said than done. So, yeah, I think that's all I had, Sheila. Was there anything I was missing?
Thanks, Kailey. No, I totally I'm a fan of Military Wild, so I've been on several events over the past few years, depending on where we've lived. So I appreciate all of the work that you guys have put in. It's definitely you can see the passion in it, whether it's from the organization itself all the way down to the ambassadors. So I definitely encourage everybody to check it out. And if there is not a chapter near you, I know they're always looking for new ambassadors.
Oh
So
my gosh,
take
yes.
that step and open a chapter near you, or something in your area. If there is a chapter and you don't see something that you're able to attend, you can always become an ambassador and help spread the love.
Dang,
There's
Sheila, do you work for
only lots
us?
of
This is
I
good.
mean,
Keep
I will
going.
sell it because it's a great organization. And I think whether you are a seasoned outdoors person or you like to do like tide pools with your kiddos, there's some place for everybody. And chances are you are not the only person. So, like you said, are you coming? You just go out and do it and bring someone with you. So, does
Yeah.
anybody have any questions for Kailey?
I'll hop on. This is Carolee. Um, I have children with special needs, and so
Mhm.
sometimes, like with the wheelchair and stuff, it can be difficult when there's mobility issues. Do you have any recommendations for some accessible activities or,
Yeah. I always
locations, things like that?
Yeah, I always think that's a really valuable thing to talk about accessibility because I think that there are definitely people like you're saying who utilize wheelchairs. That's so important. And then I know that in the military community, we also have a lot of members that have invisible accessibility issues. And so I can talk about Military Wild specifically first, and then I can tell you what I always suggest as well. Military Wild, we always post the information for all of the hikes that we lead ahead of time so families can really gauge if it's something they're wanting to participate in. That way you can see, is it kid friendly? Can you bring your dog? Is it adults only? Is it a really hard hike? Is it technically involved? And something that we do take really seriously is scouting all of these hikes ahead of time to see and ask those questions. Is this a wheelchair accessible hike? If there is a viewpoint, is it somebody that's going to be able to come with us that is utilizing a wheelchair that they'll be able to see it as well? And the really nice thing is that finally, in 2024, that is becoming much more frequent of being able to select hikes that also are able to be inclusive and accessible in general, outside of Military Wild. Again, thankfully, we finally live in a time where you can go online and typically research any public outdoor space that you might want to visit. And they should, I would say 80% of the time, include an accessibility guide. And that is something that you click and will lead you to an overall site of whichever state you're looking in and tell you which sites or which trails are wheelchair accessible. Um, there's so many strides being made in that community, which is incredible. Um, and I would encourage anybody to Google what that looks like in your state. I know that in North Carolina here, we have a lot of parks that just recently received funding where they're going to be able to have, and Carolee, you can correct me, I'm not really sure the exact term, but the wheelchairs that can go on sand, they're all terrain. Is there a specific name for them?
I can't remember. I've been trying because I know that there's an organization. I know they've donated some to the national parks
Hmm.
that have
Yeah.
like they look like little tanks almost with the
Yeah.
wheels. You
Yeah.
can
And so
yeah.
yes, exactly. So a lot of parks, thankfully, are starting to have actual physical things that anybody needing that accessibility can switch to. So they're not also having this pressure of providing their own. Imagine saying, like, yeah, you could go on the sand if you brought your own special all-terrain wheelchair. And so I definitely encourage looking up, it's called an accessibility guide for any outdoor public space, and they should be able to tell you where you can access different public lands.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions?
I would love to just hear about how I could potentially volunteer or just gather more information to see if it's something that would fit in my schedule.
Yeah, you can go on the website that Sheila linked in the chat for sure. And there is a community tab where you can look at it. It'll tell you what being an ambassador entails. I would say our overall guideline is that we just require you to lead one hike or event per month. We are adults with real lives that have jobs outside of that. And we also know that our ambassadors do too. Some of our ambassadors are active duty, and so we're always navigating their TDYs or their deployments. We also navigate PCSs, things that we know are pretty common in the community. And so, one hike per month, you can go online and see some other different like information pieces that we add as long as you enjoy meeting new people. Um, if you enjoy it and you're not necessarily the best at it, like I am, you can still join. Um, and I think that's a great way to also put out your own fibers. I know that I'm biased, it's my own organization, but I will say that something that brings me great joy is that our ambassadors do frequently tell us how much like leading these hikes has also colored their lives. And there's no, what's the right word? you don't have to stay for a certain amount of time. Some ambassadors try it out for a few months and then they realize if they have families, it becomes too much. You can always walk away there. What word am I looking for, Sheila? There's no, when you're
There's
like,
no time commitment.
right. Yeah. There's no commitment. So,
Yeah, there's not a time frame that you're signed up
yeah.
for.
And I know that you said you're at Belvoir and there's multiple ambassadors at that chapter in Northern Virginia and Southern Virginia. So also, I always say it's really nice when you already have like a pretty heavily existing chapter and multiple ambassadors, because you're basically joining your own friend group as an ambassador team. And then behind the scenes, we have about, don't like check this, but 32 ambassadors, I'm pretty sure, volunteer ambassadors all over the world. And they are their own tight little community, which is great. So definitely check out the website. You can always message me for more information too, or if you just want to hear like a more in-depth kind of idea of what that looks like, and I'm happy to help.
Kailey, do you have to be active duty to be an ambassador?
Nope. You typically, so Military Wild is for the military community, but a lot of our ambassadors have changed over. We've had ambassadors that were active duty, they've retired, they were spouses, they no longer are spouses. And so as long as you're able to lead that one hike per month, that's what we value.
And especially here in Southern California, there's lots of things other than just hikes. Like we have paddle boards, we have canoe trips, like all kinds of fun
Tide
stuff.
pooling. Yeah.
Tide pooling.
We have,
Cool.
yeah, we have an ambassador that loves rock climbing, and I has found 20 other people that also like rock climbing. And so they do that together. And really the sky's the limit. We don't just hike, we do lots of things. I just recently led a paddle on the Missouri River with the wildlife biologist, the federal biologist that's at Fort Leavenworth. And that was like a 30-person kayaking trip for all people that had never kayaked before. So you really can lead anything that you feel passionate about. Your sweet little hand is raised, Daniela.
Hey, sorry about the commotion earlier. I was dropping a kid off at a play date. So I know might have a hot mic there at the beginning, so I'm sorry for that. I have a question. How do you promote? So say, I become an ambassador and I'm in Tennessee, by the way, I'm outside of Memphis. But like I become an ambassador and I want to do a hike. How do you promote then that in your community? Like,
we definitely strongly utilize Facebook. That's what all of our chapters are on. And that's just what we found has been the most conducive to our specific military community. That seems to be a lot of the way that we can communicate. So we definitely do heavy marketing on Facebook, social media, Instagram. So I would definitely also highlight that to be an ambassador, you do need to be comfortable with social media to a certain extent. You don't need to be, out here like ABC, Fox, like levels of marketing, but definitely feeling comfortable in posting to the masses. I know that if anybody's in the GAMS Facebook group outside of the Pentagon, you probably see me posting in there all the time. And mostly through that. And then we do have a really incredible website, like you pointed out, that a lot of love went into, and we send out email blasts that way. When ambassadors start, they are paired with a mentor, someone that's been in the organization for longer. And that way they have somebody that they can rely on for communication, support, guidance. We have a handbook that we poured hours and hours and months into so that it could provide you with every resource you could ever want or need. And then outside of that, it's a lot of word of mouth. So I know some of our ambassadors, they're volunteers at other organizations. They'll talk about Military Wild there. But for the most part, because our hikes are posted on Facebook monthly and our schedule is posted monthly, a lot of it is through that social media.
and I'm sorry, you might have answered this question earlier, but do you have to be attached to a chapter then to be an ambassador?
We have another tier of ambassador called an expert member, and those are for anybody that might not be near a brick and mortar chapter where they want to contribute resources or they love getting outside and they feel that they know an area that they're in really well. And then also you can always start your own chapter wherever you find yourself. So we just had somebody apply from Oregon where we don't have a chapter right now. They're starting it on their own. We looked at their application. They're very passionate about getting outside and very comfortable. And then we also have them submit a video interview. It's self-recorded, so it's not just like 5 of us staring at you quietly while we ask you questions. It's at your own pace. And that helps us get to know them a little bit better. And then after that, we talk to them, do you feel comfortable starting a chapter from the ground up? And then that leads into them building their own community through Military Wild. And so sometimes chapters don't take off. New Mexico, for some reason, was like almost impossible. Arkansas was really hard as well, no matter what we tried. And sometimes that's just the case. And then other chapters like Virginia, Hawaii, Guam, Washington, those chapters are like thousands and thousands of members. But all of these members that PCS then to other places. So we're always opening new chapters. Go ahead, Laura.
Are there any qualifications or requirements for like criteria for it to be a hike, or an activity?
Yeah, I don't think so. Are you asking just about like age ranges or like the activity of what it has to be?
I wasn't specifically thinking of age ranges. I was just trying to think of, like, when I think of hiking, I think almost off trail, and then sometimes I think of parks too. And you said there's a wide range of it, but is there like a max or limit? You guys follow time? Yeah.
No, I think it's really, we trust the ambassadors to come up with what they're the most comfortable with leading. So if you're someone that's like, hey, I'm a pretty like beginner level hiker and I only feel comfortable doing it on paved trails or meeting at the local park, then we're fine with that as well. It's really just getting outdoors. And even then, a lot of our ambassadors, when they first start off, they'll always start off with a meet and greet. And that can be anything, going to meet at a brewery, meeting at a coffee shop, going to another event where everybody's going to be meeting up that's already been planned and things like that. And that just helps everybody get to know each other. And so we try not to put too much red tape on what it has to look like. That goes along with what I was saying before, right? Outdoors, outdoor adjacent, like it can look like whatever you think is going to be the most comfortable. Some of our ambassadors start off with a community that they've already built. And they might say, hey, my community loves running. Can we do like a morning run or a morning stroller push or whatever it looks like? And that also counts.
Anybody else? We did drop the website and Kailey's LinkedIn in the chat, so make sure you grab those. And with
Hey,
that,
Sheila,
yeah, sure, go ahead.
Sheila, I'm so sorry. I am so not tech savvy. Kailey, you're amazing.
Okay.
And thank you so much for being here. I loved hearing your story and thank you for being brave and sharing everything that you shared. I have one thing I want to say. I'm so excited to see the Channel Island kayak trip.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Oh my
did you get a spot?
No, I just looked it up and saw that, and that is incredible. And that is something I've always wanted to do. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that you guys are doing that. I had never heard of Military Wild before, so this is so exciting to hear about this.
That is exciting. Thank you.
I wanted to ask you, is there a Colorado chapter?
There is a Colorado chapter. It's on the newer side, so it's definitely still being built up, but it is active. We just put a new ambassador there because our previous ambassador is active duty and will no longer be able to volunteer. And so, yeah, they're pretty active and they're having a lot of fun. Their pictures always look amazing. The elevation there is crazy.
Okay, I'm in DC, but that's where I'm from, is from Colorado. So I was like, oh gosh, I hope there's one there. So thank you so much. This has been awesome. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
So before we move on, I'm going to have Carolee, I think, has access to it, to drop this in the chat, but these are expired now, but these are my America the Beautiful passes because my current ones are actually in each of our cars. So this is my plug. Active duty families get an annual pass to the national parks. And that's a really, really cool perk. It's also available for dependent 16 and over. So everyone in our family will have one of those. I keep one in my car. My husband has one in his car. We make sure to take it if we do travel because it's not just for national parks. It's going to be for any public land. So national forests, if you happen to drive through and you are doing a hike off a trailhead off the road, you can use that to park. Campgrounds, you just have to pay the camping fees. Things like the historic sites, there's a lot of places in DC that it will get you into free as well. And then if you are a Gold Star family or a veteran, you get a lifetime pass that you do not have to renew each year. They're super easy to get. You can get them at any National Ranger station. Or if you're not close to one, you can also get one through the USGS website, which is linked, and you just have to pay a $10 fee to have it shipped to you. Super, super easy. You can get it in just a couple of days. I actually just did that because I didn't have time. I didn't realize my pass had expired, and we were going to be hiking off of the National Forest site, so we needed that for parking. And then you just get the nice little hang tag and you hang it up, and you don't have to pay the parking fees. So make sure you take advantage of those. It's especially great when you're PCSing to have that driving across country to stop and see those awesome national park sites. And there's a lot of sites that you may not think about because they're not traditional national parks. So check that out. Any questions about those? We've had those for about 10 years. So I'm always happy to share the love there.
Not necessarily a question about that one, but it just made me think of the Blue Star Families museum passes are really great for this time of year. Like I know where we are, it's not really an outdoor time of year, but those museum passes are great. So what's that called, Sheila?
So it's Blue Star Museums. It's a partnership with the National Endowment for the Arts. And those are from Armed Forces Day right up on through Labor Day. You can go to the Blue Star Museum's website and there's a map. Check it often because museums can sign up at any time throughout the season. So there are new museums being added every day. There are about 2,000 nationwide, and they will get you and up to 5 immediate family members in free. Sometimes it'll include veterans. It just depends on the particular museum. I recently visited my parents, and the museum that I grew up doing field trips in every single year, they allowed me to bring my parents in as well, free. And that saved us like $150. It was pretty amazing. So those are definitely great options. There are nature centers, there are zoos, art museums, children's museums, all kinds of things. So definitely check that out and take advantage of that during the summer. Yes, it does include the monuments. So anything that is considered a national park site. So it includes the historic sites, it includes like a lot of the monuments, all of that kind of stuff. Anything that's a national park owned site.
On the National Park website, and I only know this because I work with the National Park Service, is you can type in your state and it will give you a list too of every NPS run site. So it'll show you like every monument, every historical land, I think, Sheila, and then pretty much any, like there's also a lot of memorial sites too that you can also have access to.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us tonight, Kailey.
Oh, muted. Thanks so much for having me, all.